Friday, March 11th, 2022. Good morning, I'm Andy Johnson. Welcome to the program. This is AM Prime for this Friday morning. Let's tell you what's going to transpire over the next hour and a half or so. We'll be talking with Mr. Steve Stout. He's a Trinidad and Tobago born citizen who's just been elected to be the next president of an institution in the United States, one of the major Catholic higher education organizations. It's called Canisius College in upstate New York, in Buffalo. We will tell you about his journey from where he was, from Trinidad and Tobago to there. He stops on the way at other places of higher learning in the United States. We'll tell you, of course, take you around the region a bit as well as part of our staples. We'll give you some updates on what's happening in Barbados and in St. Lucia. We also will be talking with a young lady named Zomari Tanker. In these times, she was awarded Employee of the Year at an advertising agency. Think about what it would have taken to get that recognition by her company in times such as these, to get people to agree to spend their money. Of course, the Newsday poll and the results from yesterday's counting of COVID-19 in our midst. So those things are coming up as we go forward on this Friday morning. But right now, with us, Mr. Dexter Riley. He's the CEO of the organization called UNIPET, the sort of independent organization which supplies fuel to some of us in Trinidad and Tobago. What are his views? What are this company's views on, we saw yesterday in the paper, in response to what the Prime Minister would have said about energy prices and the situation with energy in the country in the wake of what we're dealing with here now with what they say is the war, well, not what they say is, the impact of the war on Ukraine by Russia will happen with energy prices. How would this company sail through, navigate these waters? Mr. Riley has agreed to talk with us about that, given what some of the other petroleum dealers are saying. Well, they have to watch and see. Not sure how this impact will affect, but it certainly will have an effect. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Andy.
Oh, good to have you.
Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
Thank you for having us on your show this morning, Andy.
Well, it's always a pleasure. So let me ask you, before I ask you any of my particular questions, what were some of your responses hearing what the Prime Minister was saying a couple of nights ago?
Well, Andy, it was announced in Parliament at the last budget speech that there was some intention to introduce some legislation for liberalization of fuel prices. And it is not unreasonable to think, given the complex global environment, that the Prime Minister and the Cabinet will review the current legislation with respect to the subsidy and the impact of the subsidy, given the trend in oil prices. So we anticipate that, it's something that is not unreasonable for the Prime Minister and his Cabinet to review at this point in time.
All right, so the Petroleum Dealers Association reported in the paper yesterday saying that they believe that the prices will remain what they are for some time still, since the current stocks that they bought were bought at a certain price. That is the similar situation with you all, with UNIPET, right?
Well, I just want to point out, Andy, that price adjustments at the pump is controlled by the Petroleum Production Levy and Subsidy Act. And under the Act, the prices are posted, the terminal price for fuel is posted once a month. So I'm not too certain that it will be a function of the inventory. I'm sure there's a formula that will impact the actual prices computed, but the timing is informed by the legislation. And until that is adjusted or revised, that's what we expect to determine when prices are changed. And under the current legislation, prices will not change because, I just want to remind you, the subsidy is still in effect.
Yeah, and he went through these computations about, given what the price may be, how the subsidy would operate.
Yes, so we had some view of it, yes, but it really depends on the revised legislation because the formula will be determined by the details of a revised legislation.
Yeah, I'm told that in some cases people buy their fuel, the arrangements they have. In some cases, some are longer than others. So depending on what your situation is, that what you pay is a result of an agreement that you have, of the duration of that agreement, and that even if prices fluctuate, you're paying for some time in the future based on the agreement you have. Explain that for people who don't understand those kinds of dynamics.
So the sale and purchase of bulk fuel is done by contracts, and international contracts that will companies like Parial enter to determine an agreement in terms of a period in which they will have fuel, and prices will be also set. So for the most part, the supply will be reliable and the prices should be fairly stable based on the terms and conditions of the contract. The contracts can probably allow for changes if the environment change, but it will be in a controlled fashion. So it doesn't necessarily translate into change in prices automatically. It has to be reflected under the terms of the contract and the nature of the contract.
Yeah. One of the things the Petroleum Dealers Association is saying is that depending how these dynamics work, it is likely that they will have an effect on jobs and employment in the sector. What's your view? What's your organization's view?
Well, you will recall that in 2016, UNIPED, together with the industry, conducted a study on the impact of the current margins and sustainability of the industry. And we did get some relief from the government, and we await the enacting of a price realization for the retail prices, and that can give the sector, especially the retailers, some relief. In terms of the wholesaler, the proposed legislation continues to speak to a fixed margin for the wholesaler. And if prices were to increase, what will happen is that the business can levy taxes that are required to be paid will also increase without increase in the net income to the wholesaler. And that can affect the sustainability of the business. So again, we will wait to see what the legislation is, and we'll understand it better. But we have been in dialogue with the relevant ministries to articulate these concerns, and we feel confident that those things will be given consideration as well.
You say you've been in dialogue. I mean, whose prerogative has it been? Who's initiating the dialogue? You all or the ministries? How does that work? I mean, you all are anxious to get answers more than the people with the answers are willing to put them on the table.
Well, it's been both ways. In some instances, we will reach out to the relevant Ministry of Energy, and sometimes we will reach out to the Ministry of Finance, and vice versa. They will communicate with us as well as and when necessary. So it is a two-way conversation with respect to the legislation and the impact and its impact.
Yeah, but generally speaking, though, given what the situation is now, talk with us a little bit about how the company is operating, what may be some of the challenges you're facing outside of all of this we're talking about, and how tough it is or how not so difficult it is to be operating in this environment in this time.
Well, the last 2 years in particular have been a lot of uncertainty in the environment with the lockdowns associated with the pandemic, etc. And with what's happening on the international stage with the war in Ukraine, even further increases the uncertainty, heightens the uncertainty. And we are also in a state of energy transition. So there's another dimension of the uncertainty in terms of the industry. So we have been reviewing the environment continually, looking at ways how we can innovate and how we can continue to add value to our customers and to our shareholders, and of course comply with our wider public obligations. So it is a time of uncertainty, and we anticipate the changes and look forward to the changes that are to come through legislation, as well as increasing stability and the welfare of the industry as well, so that we can continue to provide a safe and reliable service to the public.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised the issue about safety and security, because I've seen that in some reports from some people in this business that the cost of doing business, the requirement for safety and security is high on that agenda, and it can be prohibitive sometimes. How is managing that for you all? This question of safety and security.
Yes, safety is a priority. It's a number one priority, because we transport dangerous cargo in public, so we can't compromise on that. But the cost has been escalating, and as well, the cost of managing safety and safe operations at the stations, at our bulk locations, in terms of we have commercial customers. Safety is a priority, and safety has a cost, a significant cost that escalates as the prices in the international environment change for equipment and supplies, etc., and services. Our costs continue to increase, and we have been seeing that over the last couple of years. But this is a priority, and we are committed to safety.
Right. So the Prime Minister made these announcements 2 nights ago. I'm trying to get a sense as to, so when you all met yesterday, what did you sit down and discuss particularly, if at all?
Yes, well, what we have done is to take a second look at our cost profile and prepare ourselves for dialogue, if and as necessary, so we could account for what our current scenario is and what we anticipate the future environment, how it will impact the business. So we have a proper risk assessment and the mitigating actions and the cost of those mitigating actions. So we can have, the right dialogue with the various stakeholders, whether it's at the dealer level, with the regulator, with our board, staff, etc.
Yeah, the Prime Minister's suggestion about the possibility or even the inevitability of moving towards electricity-propelled transport. What's your company's take on that? And how if that is going to happen, the introduction of that, what would be the impact for you all? Positive or negative?
As I indicated, Andy, and that's a very interesting question. As I indicated at the start, we are in a period of energy transition, and we're moving from liquid fossil fuels towards clean energy. And in this case, the focus on investment, global investment, is in electrification. And UNIPED is committed to that. We anticipate in the future there'll be a blend. And we would have, you may recall that last year, May, UNIPED would have launched the first publicly available charging station at a service station in the Caribbean. And we have since added 2 more locations. So we have 3 locations which the public can access charging services. And we are committed to continuing this drive and having a safe and efficient blend of different types of fuel, whether it's liquid or electric. So we embrace the future. We are committed to innovation, and we committed to ensure that our customers continue to have the right experience when they come to our locations.
So the sooner this becomes developed and proliferates the business more, you all are more or less, let's sort of say, ready for it, and you're readying yourself even more.
Yes, and we look forward to the leadership in this space that the Prime Minister would have mentioned in his speech as well, because we see it as a collective effort that is necessary to in the interest of the local public.
Yeah, I think one of the leading members of the association is saying that it should come more into effect sooner rather than later. You share that view?
Yeah, well, some things you can't hold back, Andy. It is happening. It is not now starting. The conversation locally have been going on, and the environment is probably accelerating it. And what we have seen in the last 2 years, Andy, with the COVID, is, a lot of technologies coming to the front because of need. And, we understand that was going to happen in electrification. It's going to have its own emergence. And we were encouraged when we saw it being embraced by pronouncements made by the Minister of Energy as well as the Prime Minister. So this is something that's happening, and we welcome it.
Yeah. Are there other kinds of challenges that may not be obvious that you're dealing with, that you want to share some of the experience of the organization about?
Well, the challenge remain about sustainability of the industry and the uncertainty associated with that, and the welfare of our employees across the sector, and of course the service that we deliver to our customers. We would like to see probably increasing fluidity in terms of these changes, the required regulatory changes, the changes in the environment. But the issues are essentially the same. What we all have seen in the last 2 years is that volume would have dropped significantly in certain periods during lockdown. It went as low as 60% down. And that was a challenge for all of us in the sector. And we continue to, struggle with the effects of those things as we prepare for these changes, because we need investment to be able to transition with the new energy. And that investment has to come from earnings. And over the last couple of years, it was tough for the sector. So we look forward to the government embracing legislative change that considers the sector, that considers the public need for innovation and investment for us to transition properly into new forms of energy consumption.
And from your standpoint, what are some of the things that, some of the other things that the government and the regulators and what have you, what are some of the things that they must do and that they must set about putting those things in motion sooner rather than later?
So, with respect to the sector, and it relates to the study we did in 2016, we need sustainable formulas for calculating margins, wholesale margin and retail margins. Of course, that will require legislation to ensure fair play and fair trade, and UNIPED is committed to that in terms of whatever pricing regime eventually is detailed in any revised legislation. We already have drafted pricing policies and strategies to ensure competitiveness and fair trade and responsible trade. So what we think is important is really the legislation that's going to address liberalization of the sector in a responsible way. And we do understand it's a complex issue. We do understand the government has to think of the total picture. But we look forward to a formula that allows us to have a sustainable margin, a sustainable industry that has continual reinvestment and sustainability, safety, innovation, change, and a focus on the customer.
Yeah, and why do you think that there has to be this emphasis on fair play and fair trade? Is that ever in jeopardy?
No, it is never in jeopardy, but it is a concern because fuel is a significant cost in everyone's personal budget and the budget of businesses. So fair trade is important so that people could feel assured that the sector is responsible. And, we are committed to that as well. So it is not in jeopardy. It's just a sensitivity of the public given the nature of the spend on fuel.
Yeah. So if let me put a hypothesis here. So let's take alternatives. Bright, gloomy, and dark. What does the future look like?
I mean, that question depends on who you ask the question. And if you ask us at UNIPED the question, it's always bright.
All right.
Because challenges can be converted into opportunity through innovation and commitment. And that's what we are about at UNIPED.
All right. Well, that's positivity there for you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dexter Riley.
Thank you.
All right, that was Dexter Wright, CEO of the organization called Unipet, the station with the green as their color on the marketplace. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we share with you the numbers, COVID-19 in our midst, the Newsday poll, the question and the responses, and more to come. Stay with us.
Catch the playoffs and the finals of the Dream 11 cricket tournament on Friday from 11 a.m. only on WESN Content Capital, your home for cricket.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
All right, welcome back to the program. Well, let's take you down the numbers this morning. What it says with COVID-19, the new positive cases, the totally recovered patients, and all that stuff that we've been sharing with you over these last couple of months. Let's see what they're saying as we speak on this Friday morning. So there you go, 107,845. That's the total people recovered from this virus over the period as we've been tracking it. We'll tell you when we started that as we get down to the numbers. You're seeing it on the board there. 20,322. That's the total active positive cases. And these numbers came about as a result of the calculations and the assessments at the end of the day yesterday. 3,673. That's the number of persons who've died having gotten the virus in that period. 131,840. That's the total number of positive cases recorded in the country since we began the checking on March 12, 2022 yesterday. And 462, that's the number representing those people who tested positive in the last set of testing up to yesterday. And 239, the total number of patients in hospital across what is called the parallel healthcare system treating with HIV. COVID, that's a matter of fact. COVID as opposed to HIV. All right. So let's tell you what the Newsday poll is and where we are with the responses. See if you can find it here. So the question for the Newsday poll is this. It is a tough and unpopular decision, but if the country, in fact, that's one of the responses. So we get to the question, would the government be justified in removing the gas and diesel subsidy at this time, given what is happening internationally? And the first response is, it is a tough and unpopular decision, but if the country is to stay afloat, it has to be done. We can only hope that the war will come soon to an end and things get better. Another response, so people who can barely afford food, what are they to do when prices skyrocket, therefore putting a whole tier of people into poverty? What is the plan to combat that? Let them turn to crime, and the question mark after both those last comments. What is the plan to combat it, and whether or not people should turn to crime? Another response is the government has demonstrated time and again that they don't care about the poor people of this country, so it will not be a surprise if they removed all the fuel subsidies. And the final response is, it will be very hard for the traveling public, but if there's no choice, well, yes. So those are the responses to the question. Would the government be justified in removing the gas and diesel subsidy at this time? Well, at this time, with us now, a lady named Zomari Tanker. She was named Employee of the Year by the organization she works with, which is an advertising agency. To do that, it requires, in my estimation, a lot of hard work, a lot of creativity, and a lot of creative thinking, because they have to come up with plans as to how to make people spend their money to put stuff in the papers and on the radio and TV, such as this. So how do you do that in a pandemic? And how do you do that to the extent that you are judged by your peers as the Employee of the Year? Zomari Tanker, they call her Zo, otherwise, and the Tanker, you know where it's coming from. You know, she's talented from two sides, you know, of talented people, creative people in the country, and the Tanker has to do with Andre Tanker, but there's more to her than that. She's also associated with people.
Good morning, Andy. Happy Friday to you and your viewers. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, good to see you. So when I first heard about that, I was wondering. I thought that in times like these, in the COVID times like these, it was harder than it is usual to get people to spend money in advertising and so on. And to do that to the point where you get this recognition from your peers. Let's talk a little bit about what may have been the challenges doing what you do in this period that sort of we now sort of seeing some light ahead of us. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, just to give a little bit of background, I work at Pepper Advertising, and yes, they would have won the Golden Pepper, which is basically Pepper Advertising's Employee of the Year award. And the essence of that is really one who exemplifies the values of Pepper at its core. So taking ownership, openness, fairness, a passion to serve. And a passion to serve really is at the crux of it when we deal with some of the really fantastic clients that we have. And COVID-19 definitely has been challenging over this last 2 years. But what we realized in doing research, just generally, when you look at the global platform, is that brands couldn't run. Brands had to show up. Brands had to be there for their customers in whatever aspects, whether it's financial aspects, whether you're a bank or whether it's your FMCG and, providing stuff that, people go and purchase in the grocery. You couldn't run. So although, yes, there would be challenges and, everybody generally looking at their budget, we have clients that trust us, and we were blessed with, clients that sort of listen to what was happening on the global platform and our advice to sort of really be there and to show up. Whether you say you look at your budget and you say, all right, I'm not going to necessarily do this across all the platforms that we would normally do, traditional, digital, etc. But maybe we would just do digital for this, but we couldn't just have our clients not be there.
Yeah, and that point about not having your clients not be there, what does that take? What does that take to convince people, well, you have to stay there?
Definitely. I think it's always partnership and trust. Basically, some things would have entailed various pitches because at the end of the day, clients still have things to do, campaigns to roll out, etc. And it just sort of assessing and deeming sort of what are the various needs, because different clients would have different needs. And definitely what we found, and I guess we were blessed in that regard, is that there wasn't much convincing at the early stages, because we have clients who really did have to show up for their customers in various ways and to publicly to show that, So I wouldn't say that there was a whole lot of convincing. I think sometimes the challenge is to, I guess, when it comes to how to execute, and they may be watching budgets to say, well, all right, I'm only going to go digital for this. But then you really know that they should be on the radio and in the press with this particular product or campaign. And then, you just come from a place of research. We don't just do things vai. So whether we present research, whether we present what's going on globally, we would find ways to convince. And then there's also that partnership and trust.
All right, so I want to come back to the nuts and bolts of it in a bit, but were you surprised that you were given that kind of recognition by your own peers?
I would say yes and no. There's always an element of surprise because you never know which way something could go. I work hard. And I think in that aspect, I felt proud of myself because I know I work hard, so that it was well-deserved.
All right. And they say that, when times get tough, the tough get going. Is that's the kind of mantra that is applicable in these times?
I think so. It depends on the tough get going. That could be done in various ways. And I think you bring various approaches to the table depending on your clients and what their needs are. So you're not going to just, yes, the tough get going, but you're not going to just try and push something down somebody's throat for no reason whatsoever because you think it's a good thing to do. At the end of the day, you're coming from a place of whether it is you do your research and again, as I say, that having that partnership is important, that relationship is important. So that, yes, you got to get going. Yes, you got to make things happen. And you got to convince your clients that, you got to be there and continue to have brand visibility. And I think that it's easier when you have those relationships established.
Is there... Or are there one or two of the pitches that you made that you were positively moved by the response, and then what did it take to convince who you had to convince on it where you had to dig deep? Is there one or two? Are there one or two that stand out for you?
There are various pitches, sometimes in advertising, we can't necessarily talk about everything. And that it depends on, sometimes a pitch is really when you are at the beginning of the year convincing a client, okay, this is what we think that you should roll out for the year. And that sort of encompasses a lot of research, a lot of various, creativity. And I think that, there would have been a lot of presentations that would have been done for the year that definitely were successful, just sort of convincing clients in general that this is what we suggest that you do in terms of rolling out for the year. In terms of a campaign that I think was very successful in the time of, if you want to call it in times of the pandemic, because of course the pandemic is still very much here. I would name, for example, the Swiss Christmas campaign that we would have recently done. And that was a good example of a campaign where, of course, the client is doing a fantastic competition where their customers can win, but also sort of being there, being visible, giving customers an opportunity to, whether it's enter in the grocery store or enter via a digital platform. So it's sort of really exploring all the traditional and digital opportunities that are available. So it's a good example of a successful campaign there.
Which one was that? I didn't quite read what you said at the top. Which one was that?
Oh, the Swiss Christmas campaign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, times like these, is it, sometimes the thinking is sort of counter what it should be. In harder times, it's easier, or in times when there's lots of money, lots of visibility, and so on. It's not so easy to convince people that this is what you have to do to stay in the game. Tough times make it better, or easier times just make things easier.
I think that there's a varied response there. I think in some cases, yes, it's a little bit tougher, and you really gotta sell your client on it. And eventually, most times, I think we've been successful in where there was convincing needed. But in general, I think we've been blessed to have clients that had to continue to be visible with brands that couldn't just sort of say, well, all right, let's not do anything because it's, there's challenges and whether there's budget constraints, etc. Because at the end of the day, you can be creative with your budget, and that's where we come in to sort of help you work with your budget and to help you have a successful rollout of something, even if it's just across purely a digital platform, for example. There's many ways that you can be effective and not necessarily have to launch your campaign across every single platform that's available. So again, if you just have a budget and you want to be on a digital platform and you only have a certain amount of ad spend and you can only be on Facebook and Instagram, that's also very powerful as well and can, help your product launch successfully. Again, if we see that there's a need to really take this particular product across a traditional platform, in other words, your target market is not just going to be on Facebook or Instagram. Your target market is going to be listening to the radio, AM and PM. That's also a very powerful medium, and you should be there. So, okay, let's look at the budget and see, even if you can't spend a whole lot, let's see what we can do here. And, and most times clients will go for it. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, again, trust and partnership. And at the end of the day, you want something to be mutually successful. And I think we look at things holistically. We don't just sort of pull things out of the air. We look at our research and we look at the best ways that we can serve our clients and also have our clients be the most successful. Because when they're successful, we are successful.
Yeah. So I mean, going forward, you're looking for, because they say we have to live with this thing and life has to come back to normal. That means what, relaxation in some ways, or even the imperative to drive even harder?
When you say relaxation in some way, in terms of the approach? Or?
Well, yeah, and from I may be sort of seeing it through journalistic eyes and so on, talking about driving harder, or you're in a phase where life will come back to normal, even in your business.
I think that COVID-19 has taught us a lot of things. It definitely has sort of, whereas we've always been very digitally savvy, but I think it always sort of makes you look at all opportunities. So whether you're delving more into digital opportunities and really showcasing what the possibilities are to clients, I think you can't relax. You gotta continue to be, efficient. You gotta continue to be passionate. You got to continue to bring ideas to your clients. So that entails really sort of knowing what's happening. So I mean, with reference to digital, there's things happening every day that's new. Just really staying on top of different things and different possibilities. Whereas we could say to a client, hey, oh my gosh, this is happening. And they may be launching something. And we propose an element of that they can now add to the table. Or, hey, we could do this particular thing better because, hey, this is what's happening here on TikTok. Or this is what, there's many different things happening that make it exciting. And I think with reference to us, talking about like different pitches, you really have to go to your clients. You got to take the first step. You don't necessarily, yes, there are many different things that they may have and they need, but I think whereas you don't relax with the approach, you definitely got to keep going as though it were normal, but then that however you roll this out or however you execute would be within the parameters of what's happening. So if there's a television commercial to do, you're going to do that in the parameters of a COVID-19, of the restrictions, etc. But you're not going to say, oh no, we're not going to sell them on that. Oh no, we can't do that because, we got to continue going and continue to show up and be efficient and effective.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes, having gotten to know you, creativity is in your genes, right? Your father was Andre Tanker. Your mother comes from the McDonald Bailey side and the music of her brothers and all of that. You think creativity is in your genes, right? People tell you that?
It certainly is. And, of course, I have my own creative career in that sense in theater and television presenting, etc., doing, voiceovers. And that is a part of me as well.
Of course, and production and so on.
Production, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it runs through the veins. You can't, you're definitely, I'm blessed. Good genes, Andy, for sure.
Yeah, no escaping it. But thank you very much. So how are you sort of basking in that kind of attention, accomplishment, and so on? How are you taking it in stride?
Take it in stride, definitely just very thankful, grateful, but you can't sort of say, and rest on your laurels. You got to continue going. There's a lot of work to be done. And, I just definitely take it in stride. There's so many things that I want to do professionally across the different, platforms. So yes, with my work at Pepper that I love, and of course with theater, and also have a passion for fitness as well, right. Teaching Zumba, etc. So, it's the work continues, the growth continues. I'm, very much about growth and trying to show up every day and being the best that I can. And taking it in stride, but very thankful and grateful. And yes, I'm proud of myself as well.
As your friends such as Natasha Jones and others will say, you go, girl.
She certainly would.
Zumri, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good to see you. Take it easy. All right. Yeah. Continue to celebrate that. Well, let's begin to take a look around the region now. We go to Barbados, so we can tell you what's happening there a little more than a year ago. With business, how they're dealing with business at the end of this part of COVID-19, moving to another phase. So take a look at this.
Tourism officials are reporting continued improved performance in the sector after more than a year of little to no business due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Chairman of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, Rennie Coppin, said after a dismal 2021 winter period, things were beginning to look brighter. Last year, the island recorded some 143,509 long-stay arrivals and 96,372 cruise passengers.
So this is where the good news starts, and hopefully the lights begin to glimmer. December 2021 long-stay arrivals were 35,843. That number is 25% of all long-stay arrivals for that entire year. And while it is 50% down on 2019 arrivals, it is almost 100% improvement on our 2020 number. The cruise arrivals for December 2020 were 65,910, and that number represents 68% of cruise arrivals for that entire year. That's a significant bellwether for the resurgence of the almost decimated cruise industry. That number also represents a percentage increase, which is actually equivalent to its numeric value. So that's a 65,910% increase on the previous year's base of 0.
Coppin said that despite other positive signs, tourism officials knew they still had a lot of work to do in order to bring the sector back to its glory days.
For the hotels, we ended the year 2021 with an average occupancy of 37.3%, which was only a few percentage points above the 31.6% we averaged in 2021. But December certainly made us hopeful. We had an average occupancy across the sector of 66%. In January 22, we had an average occupancy of 68%, and that may be the sign that we are coming to grips with this pandemic in ways that will allow a vast number of us to sustain our livelihood and rebuild our businesses. With average projected occupancies of 62%, 65%, and 45% for the remaining months of winter, which is February, March, and April respectively, we know that we still have a lot of work to do. And the summer months for which we have sight, May and June, are projected to be 37% and 30% respectively. So we've already commenced talks with our partners at the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. as the need to shore up our summer season, and we're eagerly awaiting news on their summer program.
Well, that was Barbados. We take you to St. Lucia now. This has some interest from us here as well. Police had to intervene to stop what could have been a fight between two talk show hosts, both of them representing opposite sides of the political spectrum there. Let's say no more. Let's take you to HTS News Force for the rest of that story.
Familiar political foes accustomed to firing salvos at each other over the airwaves came face to face outside Parliament on Tuesday. Co-host of Zafenu, Andrew Yadi Haynes, says the host of Keeping It Real, Norbert Botaiman Williams, turned his camera on him and began to snap pictures of him. Haynes says he asked Williams to stop what he saw as a provocative act, but Williams proceeded.
I don't come in and mix up in them things, you know. And I just there chilling and thing, and the man come in, both time and come and put his camera in my face and take photos. So I tell him, stop it. The man continuing, so I feel it's a form of disrespect. He's supposed to, if I tell you, if you take the photo, I tell you stop it, you're supposed to stop. But I'm unlucky, guys, trust me. Yeah, I don't mingle in the political thing. I support a party. When I come, I don't make noise or nothing, I just watch. I'm a spectator. But all of them people calling me Susia doing their things. They can do whatever they want, but don't go put your camera in my face. Trust me, I will not tolerate that. Straight. Guys have to learn to support the thing and don't come in people's face with the cameras and do them thing. No, don't do that. Can't be right.
Though the crowds gathered outside Parliament on Tuesday was small, the passion was fever pitch, particularly among the supporters of Sky FM who came to protest the silencing of the unlicensed radio station. News Force spoke with Williams about the incident with Haynes, who says he did nothing out of the ordinary.
He is not the only person here, and it is the freedom of the press, of journalists and other persons interested in recording what has happened here for history and for posterity to record the environment. And he is not singled out, he is not here in any official capacity, he just happens to be here just like everybody else who is captured on camera or on photo during these proceedings here today.
United Workers' Party Senator Dominic Fadey weighed in on the matter. He accuses Haynes of behaving in an intimidating manner.
I watched here today and there's a video where I see one of the talk show hosts, Mr. Yardi, rushed into the supporters on this side in a very violent manner. Our country ought not to become a country that supports that kind of behavior.
News Force reached out to Haynes on his heated exchange outside Parliament. He said the suggestion that he attempted to attack a woman is far from the truth. The timely intervention of the police prevented what could have easily descended into a fistfight between two men known to fire blows at each other over the airwaves. the sparring between Yardy versus the Bowtie Man will have to be confined once again to virtual and verbal blows, with the two using whatever broadcast means are at their disposal. Stanley Lucian for the HCS News Force.
Well, is there a lesson there somewhere for us here in Trinidad and Tobago? Well, we'll see. We hope not, though. If it is, it's that we should try as much as possible to avoid occasion when these things could be possible. But that takes us up to the hour. We have news next, followed by our discussion with Mr. Steve Stout, the Trinidad and Tobago national, who was elected president of a prestigious college called Canisius College in upstate New York, in Buffalo, New York. Stay with us. There's much more to come here on this edition of AM Prime.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Don't keep yourself handcuffed. We continue to receive calls from members of the viewing public whose cable provider is Flow and cannot receive WESN. we advise that you unfortunately reside on the original Flow platform. If you wish to receive WESN's high-quality programming, you must contact Flow to be upgraded to the new Flow Evo platform. Call Flow now and demand your upgrade.
If you live with someone who's tested positive for COVID-19 and has to self-isolate at home, take care of them from a distance and reduce their movement around the house. Give them space, a designated space, and open those windows. If you have to be in contact, mask up, both of you. If you work, stay home from work and don't go out, not even to the grocery or pharmacy. And remember, no visitors allowed. Limit the contact to limit the spread.
The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to the program. Let me just read from the notes I have in front of me here. It says that the Canisius College Board of Trustees announced that Steve K. Stout, JD, Vice President for Strategic Initiatives and Chief of Staff at DePaul University in Chicago, Illinois, was named the institution's 25th president, beginning his tenure on July 1, 2022. Mr. Stout was selected following a 10-month nationwide search led by a 15-member presidential search committee representing the college's constituencies and appointed by the Board of Trustees. Mr. Stout joined DePaul, the largest Catholic university in the U.S., in June 2018 to serve as its Chief of Staff. He also has served as Vice President for Strategic Initiatives since June 2020. In his role, Mr. Stout serves as the University President's Senior Advisor. His responsibilities include facilitating the implementation of the university's strategic plan, leading transformative institutional projects, as well as serving as administrative liaison to the Board of Trustees on key executive and strategic matters. There are other things that we will tell you about as we go ahead, but we're talking with this gentleman because, after all, at the beginning of all, is that he is a Trinidad and Tobagonian by birth. He was born in Trinidad and Tobago, went to the United States and went on a track that led him to where he is now. We're happy to have him as our guest this morning. Good morning, sir. Good to see you.
Good morning, Mr. Johnson. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of that. And what and I'm reading something else again from what it says here is that. So when you joined DePaul, that was the largest Catholic university in the United States. It is, and you were serving there. You served as Vice President for Strategic Initiatives. Give us a sense of what that is.
Sure. So we have a very broad and ambitious strategic plan. It has 118 goals and strategies included in the plan. So my responsibility is to work with my colleagues across the institution to advance some of those initiatives, whether they be things we do in the community, innovative partnerships, in particular in Chicago, enrolling new students through new programs. So any number of things that we do to help move the institution forward, my responsibility is to have a university perspective on those things and to engage constituents broadly, faculty, staff, students, members in the community in implementing and tracking our progress on those goals.
Right. And there's so much to take from that, because that's just one of the features. And I was going through these notes here, and somebody was describing you as a sort of exceptional kind of leader. But I'll come to that in a moment. Let's go back to the basics. So you were born in Trinidad and Tobago. Where were you born? You went to the United States in 2000, and we're talking about 2 decades between when you started and where you are now. So let's talk about where that comes from. So where in Trinidad and Tobago is home, and the people there who might be watching, what do you say to them?
Home is Aruca. Home is Aruca.
Yes.
Born in Port of Spain, but grew up in Aruca. Went to CIC and went to Fatima. I did my O-levels at St. Mary's College and my A-levels at Fatima. And it's been 22 years since I left Trinidad, but Trinidad is home.
Yeah. But you seem to have been on a track going forward all over those 22 years from where you started when you went to Seton Hall University in New Jersey. And you were an athlete. You were a football player and that kind of thing on the way up, right?
Yeah. So for me and my parents didn't go to college, right? Like so many of my peers, my colleagues, my parents didn't go to college, but growing up in Trinidad, growing up in Arouca, it was important for them that I have the opportunity to go to college, not so much because of what it would do for me and my life, but for my children and their children. So it was really about generational opportunity for my family. And so my parents were very, very firm and very definitive that you would go off to CIC, you would go off to Fatima, but when that's done, you'll go away and you'll go to college, and whatever success you have, you will bring other people along with you. You will change your life. You will change our family's life. And that has always stayed with me in everything I've done. So it was Seton Hall and going on to graduate school and law school, and everything thereafter was driven by how my parents can emphasize the value, the transformative value of education and higher education.
Yeah, and from Seton Hall, you went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. A lot of people talk about that, another major sort of step in this direction.
Right. My master's degree from North Carolina is in exercise sports science. So there was a time in my career, Mr. Johnson, when I thought I wanted to work in athletics, to work in sports. I grew up playing football, cricket, basketball in Trinidad. I played football in college at Seton Hall. So that's what I knew. Right? I knew sports. I knew athletics. And NCAA Division I athletics is the highest level in college. So I thought for some part of my career that's what I wanted to do with my life, is devote myself to providing opportunities for other students who wanted to compete in athletics in college. So went to North Carolina, one of the premier master's programs in sports administration, and enjoyed that experience. But during that time, I also had the opportunity to serve on the board of Regents, which is the governing board of Seton Hall University. And so in that 3 years, I learned so much about what it takes to effectively run and administer a large, complex academic institution.
So how do you think...
It opened my eyes to athletics being one small piece of the bigger puzzle. And that's where I really got interested in something more than athletics, and that was university-wide administration.
Yeah. What do you think propelled your movement, from there to the Board of Regents? So you're coming in there as somebody who's moving up through the sporting tracks, and you end up you getting a place on the Board of Regents.
Personal relationships, right? So the opportunity for me was created through my relationship with the Seton Hall University president at the time. So Seton Hall at the time had about 8,000, 9,000 students. But our president was ever visible. He was on campus. He was meeting with students. He was eating lunch in the dining hall. And I had a chance to meet him and interact with him. And he asked me the question, from Trinidad, why Seton Hall? Why you chose Seton Hall? And my response to that question, I remember he said, it was so moving that he would never forget it. And if I needed anything, to let him know. And over the course of my 4 years, we developed a relationship such that when I graduated and went on to North Carolina, and this opportunity on the board opened up, he called me and said, I think you would be good at this. I think you would represent our students well. You'll represent Seton Hall well. So we'd like you to consider this and interview for it. And so his knowledge of me, my passion for the institution and for education is really what created the opportunity to be on the board. And that 3 years really transformed how I thought about my career and how I could serve future generations of students like me, people who don't usually have an opportunity to go to college, to be successful, not just to go to college, right? But to succeed in that endeavor and to go on to leadership in whatever their field may be. So that's always been something I've been grateful for. It's about relationships. It's about people. and it's about serving others. So that someone did that for me in my college president at Seton Hall, Monsignor Sharon, and I look forward to doing that for so many students at Canisius.
Yeah, and then from there you went to the University of Pennsylvania and the law school. That's where you got your JD.
Yes, correct. And so higher education leadership in the U.S. is it's predicated on your having a terminal degree. So to be president of a college, of a university, one of the minimum criteria is to have a terminal degree in your field. And so for me, I chose law school. I chose legal education because of the skill set, because of the way it teaches you to think, process large quantities of information, and make sound, reasoned decisions and judgments. Right, so that is what prompted me to go to law school, all the while knowing, Mr. Johnson, that I wanted to be in higher education. I wanted to pursue an opportunity like this one to lead Canisius College.
Yeah. I wonder if you could talk a little bit now about what it says here about your sort of religious mission, and talk about the Jesuit aspect of Catholicism. You talk about the Catholic mission and values, how it ought to guide us in our lives.
No, absolutely. And so Canisius College is one of 27 Jesuit colleges and universities in the U.S. And what that means is we are founded by an order. The Jesuits are an order of Catholic priests who follow Ignatian spirituality, St. Ignatius of Loyola.
Yes.
So he and his compatriots at the time founded the Jesuit order. And throughout history, education is one of the things that is synonymous with Jesuits. And so for us at Canisius, how we walk the Jesuit mission today, we talk about forming men and women for others, men and women for others. That's what we talk about when we talk about the Jesuit mission. What that means is students come to us, and one of our core values is care for the whole person, cura personalis. They come to us with whatever they have in their history, whatever they have in their background. They come to us as people with unlimited potential. We care and respect them in a unique way, and we serve them through our educational mission, which for us is transformative learning opportunities. It is mentoring. It is a commitment to academic excellence that propels them to go forth in the world as men and women for others, as men and women who put other people first, the interest of others, which for me was one of the most appealing things about the opportunity to be present at Canisius. When I think about, Mr. Johnson, the global challenges that we face as a society, environmental justice, economic equality, racial equity, the solutions to those major global challenges lie in educating a new generation of leaders who are equity-minded, who think about equity, racial, economic.
Right. So if I may coin this term, the Jesuitism, if that's the term, still has the place that I see it as, because I tell you, when I was coming of age in 1970, that's when I wrote O-levels in school. And at that time, with the ferment that was taking place in the United States, and then I went to Canada, and going to school there, in some social science courses and humanities courses, the lecturers always used to talk about Jesuits with a kind of hallowed sense. These two brothers, the Berrigan brothers, their role they played in the liberalism that was taking place in the United States. You get a sense that Jesuits are special people to begin with, and then special Catholics, correct? And it was a kind of higher order in Catholicism. That's the sense that I came away with. And so when you hear somebody is a Jesuit, you look to them in a different kind of way, correct?
Yes, that's still very much the case. So to be Jesuit, it is to be associated with excellence, with academic excellence in particular, and with service. But again, when we look at the Catholic orders that founded institutions around the United States, the 27 Jesuit colleges and universities are the largest group of private Catholic universities. And it is because of that centuries, that the Jesuit order, it's 5 centuries old. It is that centuries old commitment to formation and transformation of people through education in service of others. Yes, and so the Jesuitness is still something that is held in high regard.
It has that aura. That aura carries over these decades since the late 60s, the tumultuous 60s, and into the 70s and so on. Correct?
Yes, and when you think about that experience for you and what was happening in the world at that time, put that in context of today's student and today's global challenges. I think you might agree with me that it's similar in many ways, right? What we're seeing in the world now, in this moment in time.
Yes. And you say, you're quoted here saying, I believe in the transformative power of Catholic higher education because of my life story. Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I would not be here. I would not be having this conversation with you. I would not be elected as the 25th president of Canisius College were it not for my Catholic college experience, my Catholic educational experience, which started in reality before I arrived in New Jersey at Seton Hall. It started at St. Mary's College in Trinidad. It continued at Fatima College.
Yes.
And so growing up in that tradition, and I grew up Catholic, so I've been a Catholic for my entire life. Growing up in that religious tradition, what that meant for me was a grounding in faith, a grounding in a rich intellectual tradition, the Catholic intellectual tradition, the Catholic social teaching, which always, in my mind, and the way I learned it, was about serving others, the least among us, those people on the margins. What can I do? What can we do to create equal opportunities, but to move our society forward by caring for the least among us? That is Catholic higher education. That is Catholic education in my mind. And when I think about growing up in my house with my family, I'm the first of the 4 kids my parents have. Coming from there and sitting here and having this conversation with you, having been elected as the 25th president of Canisius College, that comes about because of my commitment and my experience in Catholic education and everything I learned and how I carry that with me every day.
Yes.
And I don't think it's unique to me. I think, and I'm committed to creating those opportunities, those transformative opportunities for other students.
And the interesting thing for me is that, so I lived in Toronto, and in those days, in the 70s and early 80s, Toronto was still, quite white, but it was expanding ethnically and so on. But for a lot of us West Indians, we listened south, so a lot of people live they say the majority of people in Canada live sort of 100 miles from a US border. So in our case, it was Buffalo in Toronto, and we listened to a lot of radio and television from there. And very often on the radio stations, the programs, what they be talking about, that's how I knew this name, Canisius College. There was always something happening there that would be advertised on the radio, WBLK and so on. So I got familiar with that place that way. Canisius College. So the name is... Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. I was thinking about that earlier on when you mentioned you spent some time studying in Toronto, because that is fairly close to Buffalo. And so Canisius has a history and a presence there, and we hope to continue that going forward as a pathway to the United States, a pathway to Catholic Jesuit higher education for students in Toronto, in Canada, who would be interested in it. And historically, based on what I've learned about Canisius, they've been always, our students in particular, have always been pursuing this idea of justice. And so, I know and understand in the Buffalo community at Canisius, I follow a long legacy of leaders who care deeply about that community, who care about racial, ethnic, social justice, and what that looks like. So that means something to me, that the institution has that history. And I, as president, have the opportunity to live it every day in my own way, and to continue to move Canisius forward, being a justice-oriented, equity-minded institution.
Yeah, and it says that part of your plan would be to lead transformative institutional projects. You have things in mind that you might want to just give a taste of?
I do have some things in mind, but for me, the most important part of my leadership, my leadership style, is being collaborative, is leading teams, working with and in a team environment. I love that about my football experience. I love that about my legal practice, was working on a team to help drive successful outcomes for our clients. And so what I want to focus on is listening to the campus community, to our faculty, staff, our current students, our friends and collaborators in Buffalo, in Western New York, our prospective students and their parents. I want to listen. I want to take on board what their ideas are, what their vision is for Canisius, and blend that with my own to derive and develop our vision, our collective vision for the institution, and our strategy, our strategic plan. I obviously have my ideas based on my experiences and my understanding of the challenges facing higher education in the United States right now. But it's more important for me to, as a leader, to listen and incorporate that feedback, that dialogue, that engagement in how we develop a shared vision and a shared plan for the institution. In my experience, those have been the more successful ones, leaders who take time to get to know and value and appreciate the opinions of their community.
Yeah, and do you know Dr. Wayne Frederick?
I do not. No.
All right, well, so he's a Trinidad and Tobago boy as well, who is the president of, or the head of Howard University. He was just given the Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, coming from, I heard him talk one time, his mother was a nurse in the Port of Spain General Hospital, and sometimes he used to go there to study because she'll be working and that kind of stuff. So he's head of Howard University, so he was just given the Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago in these latest Independence Awards, which were given out in the last couple of days.
That is, again, goes back to something I mentioned earlier. It is a privilege to walk in the footsteps of pioneers, of people who have done incredible things like that. And I will, you've given me some homework. I will have to reach out to Dr. Frederick and spend some time with him if he will, if he has any. I know it's a very busy job being a college university president, but hopefully I get a chance to connect with him and learn from him, learn from his path. I always try to learn as much as I can from people who've done it.
All right. Well,
so thank you. Yeah. Thanks for that insight.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming on, and it's been a pleasure talking with you, Dr. Steve K. Stout.
Thanks so much, Mr. Johnson, for the opportunity. Have a great day.
You too. And we hope
take care.
We hope to see each other sometime soon. Good. Well, we move from that down, this success story, to another one. This is, watch this, powerlifter Tamara Walcott in a new record in the elephant bar deadlift during the Rogue Record Breakers Strongman exhibition of the 2022 Annual Sports Festival in Columbus, Ohio. Take a look at this.
You want to see a big road record? He's going to go for it.
641 pounds deadlift.
All right, let's just quickly show you what's on the front pages of these newspapers. This is the Newsday Trinidad and Tobago. That's the front page. And this is the back page. The headline on the front page would make for interesting reading of that. This is the front page of the Newsday Tobago. And this is the back page. But before we're done here, let me just say that I support wholeheartedly the appointment of the state of emergency, what am I saying? The committee, the Commission of Inquiry into this incident at Paria. The Prime Minister, well, he got a lot of marks for deciding to jettison the committee headed by Mr. Tia and set up this Commission of Inquiry, although there's a lot of work to be done to make commissions of inquiry realize what they stand for. In a lot of cases, they come together. In some cases, they can't even get people to come and testify because the laws are such that people aren't commanded. So we have to fix that, and we have to go ahead and implement the recommendations and the results from commissions of inquiry. This one should start it if the others haven't before. I also had some issues with some concerns about the queries that were being raised against Mr. T as to why he was seen to be not the person to conduct an independent inquiry. But from some of what I've seen in the last couple of years, I think there was merit in that, and also the question of the situation at WASA, the continued beating up of the management and staff there. I think it will take a toll, if it hasn't begun to already, on the management and staff there. And I think some of that should be pulled back now. And we should see more of what the minister says is the transformation plan after 2 years. We don't know anything about what those details are, so we can't measure anything. That's just my thought as we end this program this morning. And for this week, I tell you, thanks for watching. But before we go, at 10 o'clock, I'll be back here with today's edition of 10 Questions. So stay with us for that. But in the meantime, we'll have news at the top of the hour, followed by today's edition of Talking Point with Shah and Small. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching. See you around.